Welcome! In this video, we are going to look at using Gatsby Image, a powerful component that Gatsby ships with that allows us to do a lot of things with our images for optimization and performance and general ease of use over a normal HTML or React image component. Starting over at the documentation, we could see that Gatsby Image is a plugin for Gatsby that has a specific image component. And it says it's not really a replacement for all images. This is really for times when you have either a fixed or a full width stretching image. However, this points out the problem that a lot of times you have large images and this will slow down your site. And there are a lot of different performance things that you could do to speed up the loading and optimization of images, and this will do it for us. If we click over to the demo real quick, we could see that they have a bunch of different effects as well to different all-around speed and optimization of size performances. But we could see that we have a blur up effect. You can see that going a little bit. A background effect that will load a certain background. The traced SVG, which is a really cool one. WebP, which is a newer standard of images that is more optimized that we could work with, and then take us back to the docs. So I suggest that you check this out a little bit. You could kind of see the effect, and you could always slow down your browser a little bit to see them in more effect. However, we're going to jump into start using them. What we need to do is install Gatsby Image, as well as we're going to install Transformer Sharp and Plugin Sharp. This is going to do the actual hard work of the optimization for us. We set those up in our config, and then we can import an image component from Gatsby Image, and we will also look at how we could query our data, because what's going to happen once we set up Gatsby Image is that Gatsby will be able to find all of our images and then get sharp or optimized versions of those images. The other thing that's going to be important are fragments. So there's a bunch of different data that we could get with images depending on how we want to use them. And fragments, remember, are little bits of GraphQL that can be reused. And Gatsby has some by default for us. So this is going to be really helpful for us. And we will come back and use these in a little bit once it all makes a little bit more sense. However, to start off, let's come back into our project, and we're going to run npm install Gatsby Image and then all of this other stuff as well. Okay, so starting off, npm install Gatsby Image. And then we also want to install Gatsby Transformer Sharp, and then just Gatsby Plugin Sharp. Oftentimes with some of these packages, you'll need to install some others to get up and running as well. We saw that with Helmet and some of these other plugins that we've started using. So let's just go ahead and let that run. And in the meantime, we could come in to our Gatsby config and set this up as well. Okay, so what we have to do here is we have to resolve Gatsby source file system to find our images. And so the easiest way to do that is to just duplicate what we have there before and make some modifications. This is going to be images. And now we have to make a decision. So do we want to be storing all of our images inside of our source folder, or maybe an images folder inside of our content might make a lot more sense? We would have to switch between the two of those. And it might be a little confusing if you're trying to do something that should be in a component and it's outside of source. So we're going to leave ours in the source folder for now. However, you could set up multiple ones if we have blog images later, and we'll look at pulling in content from the blog as well. And then the other step of configuration is just going to be adding in Gatsby Plugin Sharp and Gatsby Transformer Sharp to our list of plugins. And then Gatsby Transformer Sharp. Great. Okay, so we should have everything ready to, let's just run this real quick. Okay, so now we could run Gatsby develop again and get everything up and running. And we're going to want to come back over into our graphical interface and see at some of the new access that we have. So what we should have now is we should be able to pull up all of our images and find out extra information about them. And there'll be kind of two ways that we could do that. So once everything is up here, let's come back to our site and go check out graphical. I'm going to go full screen here just so we could see things a little bit better and zoom in a bit. Okay, so notice that we now have a few extra things. We have all image sharp and we have image sharp. So if we come down into our nodes and we look at all of the data that we have here, let's see, sizes. Let's come in and get our source. We could see that we have our Gatsby icon and our Gatsby astronaut. However, we have a ton of other information. We have source set here. We have source set WebP. We have traced SVG. That one will take an extra second. Yep. And we could get all of this different information about our images. So this is what Gatsby will enable for us. I also want to show you that if you go into all file and we look through all of our files too, some of these files will have this child images sharp. Because there's a way to query and work with files, sometimes it's easier than going into all images sharp. You'll also see that we go into all files and or look for a specific file and we could get children images sharp that way. Let's just show that this does have the same information. And you can see that we get that as well. However, not all files in our system will be images. So that won't be for everything, but it is possible to query files and get the child image sharp data. Now, let's look at that specifically. I want to show you how to query one specific image, because rather than linking to it or importing it directly into our component like we looked at in the last video, it's actually possible to do a GraphQL query and get all of this extra data, which is going to be something that we want to have to plug into the Gatsby image component. So if I come into file equals, let's see, here we go. No, not relative directly, I want relative path. So now I can set the relative path equal to how I would actually get that image. And since it already knows that my images are going to be located in a certain folder because of the configuration I set up, I should just be able to plug this in and get the information I want. So I'll come into child images sharp sizes, and let's just see the source of it to test it out. Great. Okay, so this is how we would go about querying an individual image. And it might seem like a little extra work if you haven't worked with Gatsby and GraphQL and you're used to just directly importing. But the benefit is that we don't just get the URL. We could actually get a whole bunch of data, like all of the fixed sizes and source sets, as well as fluid, which will be great for making stuff 100% width and adjust to, again, what size device somebody is having and downloading from. So these are going to be some very common queries that we're going to be setting up, of grabbing fixed and fluid images, as well as sometimes even just the source or other information directly. So what we could do now is come into our site and look at how to load these into actual components and make full use of them. And in order to do that, we're going to unsplash, come into here, grab some nature images, and just download a bunch of these, just so that we have something to work with. Okay, so I'm going to grab all of these images I just downloaded and put them into my images folder. So now I should have a bunch of images to work with. However, what I realize is that you're going to begin maybe wanting to organize some of these a little bit, because if what I want to do is grab a bunch of images, so I'm going to actually put some of these in a subfolder called gallery, and we'll just grab all of them except one. And we'll put those into a gallery folder. And that will be helpful in a moment. So we've got one image that we could just grab normally and one image or a bunch of images in a gallery folder. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is come in and create a new page. I just want a new page that I could play around with doing a bunch of images stuff in it. So I'm going to create a file called photos, and then I'll just copy and paste some stuff from our index page over into here. And we'll take out this image, and we'll give it a title. Working with Gatsby Image. And we could take out the extras. And let's just go ahead and add this to our header component so that we could easily link to it. So after our about page, we'll just put a photos page. How easy it is to make photos or make pages with Gatsby. All right, something is broken there, but let's go check that out. And And there we go. And we're not using a link, so we could take that out. Okay, so now we've got a nice page to work with. And I'm going to redo some of this a little bit. Const photos. This is not necessary for working with it. Just some preference here. And what is going to be necessary is that we're going to need to be able to do some queries inside of our component here. So I'm just going to give myself some more room in order to be able to do that. All right, so the first thing we want to do is make a GraphQL query and get some of those image properties that we saw we had access to in graphical. So up here, after, let's do before layout, the order doesn't really matter. I'm going to bring in GraphQL, and I'm going to bring in use static query so that we can make some queries to everything, and that'll come from Gatsby. Great, and now inside of here, I could set up a data object that is going to use static query, and that will take a GraphQL query, just like that. So now we have to go get one of our queries, and let's come back into here. And you saw how we got our Gatsby astronaut, and we got some information about that. I'm going to copy this over and come inside of my query, and we'll set up a new query called image. And then inside of here, I could put this. But because it's going to be a new file, I just want to rename it. So I could just rename it like this to be called data.image, and that should get us our image. The other thing is I want to work with this new image that we downloaded. So let's refresh that images folder. And the Ali Smith one, I'm going to remove some of this. It'll just be the name, Ali Smith, great. And then let's grab that file instead. Okay, so I'll come down after this and let's just good old console log out our data and see what it is that we're getting, make sure everything is working properly. Okay, so coming back in here, we could see spelling mistakes are so often the error, aren't they? All right. Okay, so coming into our console now, we could see that we've got our image, and we've got child images sharp, our fixed and fluid sets, and we've got the ID of our image. So this is great. This is the information that we want to be getting. Now let's look at how to plug this into Gatsby Image. So now the other thing that we could do is come in, and after all of this, we want to, or let's put them together for now, import image from Gatsby Image. We have that set up, and now we can plug this data into an actual image tag. So the Gatsby image takes a bunch of different properties, which I suggest you look over in depth. We're going to begin covering and working with a few of them, but the first thing you want to determine is whether you're setting a fixed or a fluid image. So the fixed is going to have a set width, and the fluid is going to be 100% of its container. To start off, let's just look at fixed, and we would go into our data, into image, and then remember it's inside of child image sharp, and then we could get our fixed data. Now it looks like it's telling us fixed is not an option, so let's look at that data object again and see. We go into image, child image sharp, and fixed should be the correct one. Okay. So the other thing is that notice how we hard-coded exactly what we want here. However, what we want to do instead is come back to the documentation for Gatsby Image, and we want to look at all of these options down here. So what we could do is we could get the fixed properties and everything that Gatsby image needs using one of these. Now you could get into using with WebP and traced SVG and all these others. I'm just going to start with the most basic, and I'm going to put that 1, 2, 3 there into the fixed, and then I'll get the fluid and put that 1, 2, 3 there. And this ensures that Gatsby Image is going to get all of the specific data that it wants. And with the fixed, we could also come in and give it a specific width. We'll just set this to 400 for now. and that will ensure that it is a fixed width and it's constrained to that size. There's also some other cool stuff you could do, like I'll just show you one of the effects is duotone. Well, let's get this working and then I'll come back and show you some other cool things we could do with it. So if we come back in now, you should see, let's go ahead and uncomment out our image and see what we have. Now we've got our image. So we've got a fixed size and we could come in and change that in the query, and that's just going to be fixed. So this is what you would want to use if you have fixed sized. And then there's other stuff that we could do with it. We come back in here to all of the different props. We could see fixed fluid fade in, duration, the title alt. Of course, we want to put an alt in there in a moment. Class names, we could hard code specific styles or image styles, but placeholder styles, background, on load and not. So there's a lot of different properties you could see that we get when we're working with Gatsby Image, which is why this is the preferred way to do this. So let's just come back down here. Let's add an alt. Pretty white and yellow flowers. Okay, and then some of these effects like duotone are kind of cool. So check out some of those. It's not alphabetical. And if I just search here, it's telling me that duotone is an option, but I'm not seeing the documentation for it at the moment. So let's just come in here and I'll show you. We could do duotone, and you start with the highlight color, and we'll make that equal to white. Oh, sorry, forgot where I was for a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we could do a shadow color. And this is going to be, start the server back up. There we go. So you can see we could change it to other colors. It doesn't just have to be those. So you could do some really cool effects and play around with a lot of stuff is possible with images and working with fixed images. However, we also have access to fluid images. So let's look at those now because they are a little bit different. We could do the same properties of highlighting and all of that stuff, but they work a little bit differently. So if all we do is we come down into this image and we duplicate it and we change fixed to fluid, we're going to see that this is going to be a fluid image. And if I change the size of it, it will always be 100% width. The other nice thing is that these are going to be optimized. So if I'm at a really big screen size when I download, it will give me a larger and more quality image. And if I'm on a smaller device or something like that, then it will optimize those as well. So I'm going to be getting different size specific static images depending on what I need. And you can go into a lot more depth in how to customize these and fade them in and having different effects. But for now, I think that this is a pretty good demo of how to do some of the basic stuff that you would with just getting images, how to make the query, and how to get the data. So I'll show you one last little thing here, because sometimes you want to get a group of images. So I'm going to show you a query for that. So what we want to do here is look at how would we go into our images folder, get everything inside of the gallery, and do a loop over all of these, displaying all of those images, which is not super uncommon. So just want to take a moment to show you how to do that. So what we would do is rather than go into a specific file, we'll go into all of the files, and we're going to filter by, rather than relative path, we could do relative directory, and make sure that that is equal to the path that we would find them in, which is gallery, because it already knows where our images are. So it should be able to set that up and then, or grab them. And then we should be able to go inside of that and grab the ID. So let's just test this out real quick. Hopefully this works. So if we come into our object, we've got all of our images. Then we've got our images. We have their ID there. So let's also grab something very similar to what we have here. And we could grab child image sharp for each one. We'll take out the duotone for that. And let's just get fixed for now. I'll assume that you know how to do fluid. So I'll just do fixed ones and get some small images there. And test this out. And we should see we've got our images. nodes, and then for each one, the child image sharp has its fixed. So let's see if we could just map over all of these images then and put out a little bunch of thumbnails at the bottom of the page showing how we would query all of these and then put them out there. So what I'm going to do, let's do this underneath photos, is I will create a div with a class name of gallery. And then inside of here, we could grab our data images and simply map over each one of those. And that will give us our specific image. And actually, we don't really need to return much. All we need to return is one of these image tags that has the key, because remember, whenever we loop over something, we want to grab the key, and that's why we have not just the child image sharp for each one, but we also have the unique ID, which is going to be helpful here. And then we could just set fixed equal to, actually, images won't work. We got to go into the nodes for each of the images, map over them, and then we should be able to get image fixed. And close that out. Let's try that. And just get our syntax correct here. And it is not finding this. So let me back up a second. And before we start plugging this in, let's just look at our data one more time. Missing something here. Okay, so we go into images, and then we go into nodes. So we've got data, images, nodes, and then we map over each one, and that should give us our image. Oh, we need to go into child image sharp to get some of that stuff. That's why. So child image sharp and then fixed. And now we've got all of our photos. Cool. However, these are not proportionally what I was expecting with the fixed. Width 200, height 200. There we go. So check out how much you could do. Otherwise, to do all of this cropping and image setup would take quite a bit of work. However, with Gatsby Image and making our queries a certain way, as I said, it might seem at first like a little bit extra work to query things with this format, but you're going to get a lot of benefits from it, including being able to load different things. If you were doing fluid and this was controlled fluid wise, you could have them spread depending and load different sizes depending on what that person's performance needs were. Also, it's going to automatically blur them in. And again, there's a lot of really cool stuff that you could do with Gatsby Images. Hopefully this is a start that will help you get you going, set up in the right direction, how to query individual ones, how to query a group of stuff, how to loop over them. And I wish you a bunch of luck with this, because this is, again, a really cool tool that Gatsby has built in, and definitely the way you want to be working with images. Now, in the next video, what we'll do is we'll turn our attention to our MDX content and look at how we could use Gatsby Image inside of our Markdown and control some of our images that way, which will be actually more in our content rather than as hard-coded in this example.